Hey, welcome back to Variance Betting. My name's Ted Knutson. I'm a professional sports bettor, and I am sharing my picks with you for the English Premier League for the week of January 17th. I'm also going to give you some updates on how my betting's gone this year. Hint, it's been really good. And I will tell you how to get some incredible deals on your own wagering that we've managed to negotiate, which I'm super excited by. So thank you for joining us. Hopefully, good luck in your betting, and you'll learn a few things along the way. Right, so here we go. I kind of paused this a little while ago because I wanted to basically be able to rejig this and be a little more fun. It was like, yeah, okay, Knutson's talking about his bets. That's fine. And at the time, like they were a little up and down. And then I've ripped through just an awesome run from November through to mid-January. And now we are fully positive. And I'm going to give you some updates on that as to how it's gone. I'm also going to give you some information on our partner, bet105.eu. We've managed to negotiate a low juice deal for you. So a reduced juice or reduced VIG, reduced bookie margin, however you want to talk about it. I've managed to negotiate that for you guys. You'll get that on Fridays, as long as you're part of the crew. And also, I want to tell you a little bit about the slight change in format that's going to make this more fun to follow along with as we go. So let's get started on that. Right. So Bet 105. People have been asking me, how do I bet like you? Like, how do I find better prices? In particular, how do I find the lines that you're betting on? Because those people are following along with my bets on the Variance Betting premium subscription that you can find in the show notes below. And they've been, you can't find them at every bookie. So one of the things that I've been working on for the last few months is talking to and negotiating with potential partners to be able to provide you better options for where you want to wager. The important bits were finding some place that we trust. And obviously Pinnacle is a great place to bet at if you can get access to it. Another one that I listed in my roundup is Bet365, although Bet365 won't allow me in because they don't allow winners. And then bet105.eu ends up being probably the best choice for this. And this isn't like a promo to say that, oh, these are our sponsors. I'm not getting paid by Bet105 to run this. I wanted to be able to find a place where people who were smart that actually win in their analyzed bets would be able to bet, and they take your action and they give you all of the good customer service. So that's what we got here. They've got they let winning players play. They've got reduced juice, so you're not playing gigantic bookie margins, no rollover requirements. You're not going to get a bonus here, but if you've been following variance betting, you know that you care more about having reduced juice than you do about any bonus, because paying less VIG if you're betting regularly is so much more important than whatever the tiny little bonus that you're going to get out of most books are. And then finally, you also have great withdrawal times and you get good customer support. So but the bigger thing is, if you are part of this, you will start to get reduced juice on Fridays on the leagues that I cover between 1 p.m. and 6 p.m. UK time. So they're basically trying to make themselves into the spot for kind of the mid-market Friday betting. And we've managed to negotiate like a big benefit to all of you in putting your bets in. Right. So the important bit, why do you care, right? So if you've been following long variance betting at all, you know that I have been a professional sports bettor off and on. I worked in the gambling industry for something like 20 years. And then I took some time out to build StatsBomb. And that was obviously really successful. And we built the best data in the industry in order to be able to do betting and do analyzing football games. And now I'm kind of coming back into the space. I built a couple of models. We've got a couple of models that we're looking at that help guide us. We look at injuries every single week too. And I started to produce that at the beginning of the year for Variance Betting premium subscribers on the Transfer Flow newsletter. I did it in a casual way. Like I was only betting 200 pounds a shot. Just kind of small staking. Like I used to bet at levels with multiple zeros attached to the end of that, not just 200 pounds, but 20,000. In the cases of the hedge funds and syndicates, you're looking at 200,000 or more that they are able to bet. But at 200 pounds a bet, for me, this was pretty relaxed and pretty casual. And as I said, like the first part of the season, maybe the first quarter of the season was a bit of a struggle. I was down a little bit, but I felt like the process was good. And there were signs that it would start winning in the future, having done this many, many times in the past. Since that time, ripped off a ton of wins. And this is what the results look like so far. So we've got the Premier League, where plus 5.5 units on 50-50 bets for the season so far. Small loss on totals, but plus 500 pounds on 200 pound bets in that league. English Championship plus 8.5 units, plus one on the spreads, up around £1,100 there. And then Champions League ended up flattening that out. Had a really tricky sort of early run there, but a couple of good results there as well. These are the only three leagues that I'm doing as a broader analysis for everybody to be able to follow along. Partly because they're fun, partly because they're more interesting to everybody else. And the Championship is a blend of being pretty good size. Like if you wanted to get down good size bets as a professional, it was always there. And it was always the league that I did the best in, because partly I worked for Brentford back in the day. I was not betting when I worked there, but I knew the league really, really well. And even before then, I followed it pretty closely. So I'd be able to have more knowledge than either the models or the bookies in making sort of adjustments to the numbers as they came through. Just this past week, we had a midweek round with the Premier League and the Championship. I had 5 bets in. We won basically 2.5 of those. So we finished plus 2.5. And now the current status is 2,400 to the positive. Now, I mentioned that I wanted to make this a little more fun. So one of the things that we're going to do for the rest of the season is we're going to tie my stake size, which had started out at just £200, to the amount of subscribers that I have to the Variance Betting newsletter that I publish basically every single round for these leagues. And so as of this morning, it was 325 subscribers. If you're at all interested, follow the show notes, the link in the show notes to hop on board. I tell you what my bets are. I'm not touting my picks or anything. I'm giving you the information that I've done for the past 20 years as a professional bettor, and you can follow those if you want. But really what people find value from is choosing their own bets and using my analysis and some of the injury updates in there as a useful starting point to make their own wagers. So there we go. We're gonna start placing stakes at 325 per bet as I make my bets this week. Now for the analysis part of the show, which we'll see if this goes well or not. Nothing's guaranteed. Also, past results are not a predictor of future performance necessarily. Okay, so starting off way up north, we've got Newcastle, who've been on an incredible run, 9 wins in a row, facing Bournemouth, who also have been one of the surprise good teams this season. When I look at this line, I think Newcastle are a little more fragile than their run states. Basically, they've faced some teams that have had injury crises, like Spurs. Yeah, if you don't have any healthy center backs and you've got to face Ishak, you're going to struggle a bit. Bournemouth do have some injuries, and Newcastle are relatively healthy, but they've also faced like a bunch of bottom teams as well. I'm not saying that Newcastle aren't good. They are good, but Bournemouth are really good. And this this line is approaching +1 goal for Bournemouth, which means that Newcastle would have to win by 2 goals or more in order for you to lose your bet. I think Bournemouth are a really tough matchup for most teams, period. And they are quite scrappy. They're missing both of their 2 sort of starting forwards generally, in that Unal's out with an ACL injury. He's kind of the backup, but Evan Nielsen's out with a metatarsal fracture. He'll be out for a bit. Nevertheless, I still think that they can be dangerous on the counterattack. And I think, even though I think Newcastle have a pretty good home field advantage here, I'm going to be on Bournemouth for this match. Moving on, we've got Leicester versus Fulham. Now, Leicester are pretty interesting here. They put up 21 shots in the midweek round against Crystal Palace. Now, obviously, they lost that match, but they didn't used to put up a lot of shots against anybody. They have been just resilient enough to be a tough matchup since Van Nistelrooy's come along. The squad's decent. I don't think the squad is like particularly bad. In fact, I think someone like Everton would probably, as a whole, be willing to swap squads there. As I did in my roundup, which again, you can find the link to all the stats. I looked at which teams I'd won the most on so far this season, and also which ones I've lost the most on. And I did a whole analysis of that for free for everybody to be able to see. Leicester were one of the teams that I had won the most on so far this season. Now, the issue here is that their numbers aren't good enough yet for me to just be like a happy bettor of them to be able to draw or win at home against Fulham. Fulham are a good team, also quite a challenge. So I'm leaving this one alone this week. I think it's interesting, and I kind of have a lean toward Leicester, but I'm not getting involved. There's not enough edge or difference in the market versus sort of what my model numbers suggest it should be. West Ham versus Crystal Palace. So this is a game where you get Graham Potter, who's the new head coach at West Ham, still trying to find enough training time to implement his his tactical principles there out in East London, and it's gonna take a few weeks. I think usually it's quite difficult. Now they won 3-2 in the midweek, but the caveat to that is they scored 3 goals off of 4 total shots, one of which came at the very end of the match. That is not good process there. So it's definitely not enough to upgrade them. If it were Lopetegui before, or if Crystal Palace still had Trevor Chalobah in the squad, who's been recalled to Chelsea this week, I would probably be on Palace. As it is, there's enough unknowns in this game for me to leave it alone. I don't know how much Crystal Palace are going to suffer without Chalobah. I think he's been really good. I think he might just slot straight into the starting lineup at Chelsea, which is, a big sort of feather in his cap. But we're going to leave that one alone this week. Moving on to West London, we have Brentford at home at the G-Tech against Liverpool. Now, for me, Brentford home matches have been fantastic this year. Tons of overs. They've been really difficult to beat at home, and they've been just like marshmallow men away, losing just about everything until they squished Southampton a couple weeks ago. Liverpool, we have a great deal of respect for them, but 1.25, that line's too big. Now, could Salah go nuts? Yes, absolutely. They can go nuts at any point, but usually Liverpool, especially away, tend to grind things out. And Brentford are very direct, and they will at least be a challenge to Liverpool's defensive side. So I think that this will be more of a cagey match. 1.25 is a number that I like, and we're going to be on the dogs at home here this weekend. More London. This time is a little less fun for me. So if you look back at what happened in August, Aston Villa were a little bit better than Arsenal up in Birmingham. So when they faced each other a long, long time ago, Aston Villa were just a clip better in the expected goals, and Arsenal ran out 2-0 winners, I think, in that game. A glorious little slice of revenge for all of the pain and suffering that Unai Emery has put Arsenal fans through over the years. This time around, a lot has happened since then. Arsenal have had injuries. They seem to have lost Gabriel Jesus for the season and maybe an entire year. In addition to this, the Gunners have been struggling to score goals lately, and they are kind of stuck together with, chewing gum, maybe some duct tape, rubber bands. They're really struggling to have a healthy squad that is high performing at all times. Now, that's said with a caveat in that their process has been exceptional, despite the fact that Saka's out, despite the fact that Odegaard seems to be occasionally injured. Calafiori is in and out of the lineup. Nwaneri is injured, but he came out of the academy, very important. And Lewis Skelly also is another academy kid that's immediately slotted in and feels like he's going to have a huge future. Arsenal's underlying numbers very good. Aston Villa's underlying numbers okay. If you can get the 1.25 on this game, that means that Arsenal have to win by 2 or more against Villa in order to win, or in order to lose this bet. I like Villa at plus 1.25. The places that we talk about, Pinnacle and at Bet 105 EU, will have this line for you to bet. I think that's a solid bet. I'm not saying that you'll win this, and in fact, as an Arsenal fan, those of you who follow the pod know that that's true. Obviously, I have a lean the other way in my personal feelings, but I got to go where the money is. And the money says that the Villa are a little undervalued at plus 1.25. Moving on to the Sunday matches, we have Everton, who are now coached by David Moyes, which I find we've come full circle. Not a whole lot of difference between Dyche there. And I think Dyche did a truly exceptional job with the difficulty of what was going on at Everton at the time, being under a cloud of bankruptcy, having a really weak squad that aged considerably in the last 2 years, and they hadn't really brought in any fresh legs and replacements. Barely has any fullbacks, doesn't have a great midfield. I think he was impressive. It's not like David Moyes gets to change all of that. I think they're trying to make some signings, and Friedkins have said that they're going to invest some money, but we'll see how much impact that has. Now that said, Spurs are weird and they're still really injured. And the fact that Like they just have not been able to keep teams down consistently while also being able to generate the high levels of attack that they had earlier in the season, means that they're not the same team at all. And we have to make some significant adjustments here. So Everton at home, like you win half of your bet if it's a draw. I like that. The VIG's a little high on it, but I think that that's perfectly fair. We'll see. This could be a very grindy match, but like Spurs don't play those types of matches, so I'm not convinced of that. So those who've been following my gambling stuff for the season know that Nottingham Forest are probably the most impressive team that we've bet on this season. We've been getting the market have taken ages to adjust to these numbers. 1.25 is a big number at home, but Southampton like cannot keep anybody down, and they particularly can't do it late in games. If you watch the midweek match, the first half was very even between Manchester United and Southampton. And the second half was very, very, very not even. And in fact, United went from being 1-0 down in the 81st minute to winning that match 3-1. And 3-1 was like a fair score line according to the expected goals. So Forest are not potentially as explosive as United, but they're not far off. And like in particular, I think they're better defensively. So I think the Forest are in pretty good shape. Southampton still have some minor injuries to fairly important players, or they're coming back off of injuries. We'll see. Like this is on the edge of being a pretty big number, but Southampton have been so bad that until they prove that they're like not nearly that bad, we're going to have to keep betting against them. United versus Brighton. Brighton have actually lost the most time for players being injured this season. And they're just starting to get back to the point where their players are moderately fit and they kind of have their first 11-ish coming available to them. So I expect that hopefully they'll make a run soon, but this is maybe a week or two too early. And given it's in Manchester, like I think that this is a no bet. Given United are also pretty like defensively solid, even if they're not usually able to score against good teams. Like I think that you leave this one alone. Maybe watch it. I think the match will be pretty interesting to watch from a tactical perspective, but I would not touch it from a betting perspective. Right. One more Sunday. We have Ipswich versus Manchester City. Now, Manchester City have started to make transfers to bolster this squad. And they've got one through the door in Kusanov. They're just about on the cusp of Marmoush, it looks like. But I still think they need another midfielder or two, or a midfielder and fullback. They're not there yet. This should probably be a bet on Ipswich. But what keeps happening with Ipswich is they had no shots after Brighton went ahead in Ipswich in the midweek. They basically try and play it very tight. They try and drag the games out and hope that they can get away with that. Maybe they score on a break or a set piece. But the problem is, like, if you have that style of play and City score a goal kind of early-ish, right, that's a big problem. And I don't think that City are great right now, but I just feel like there's too much of a coin flip involved in what happens there and whether this match runs away if Ipswich go down a goal. So I'm leaving that alone. You don't necessarily have to do so, but I think I would not touch it. Moving on to the Monday match. Really weird. Chelsea versus Wolves on a Monday night. I'm looking at this one, and if they hadn't recalled Chalobah, I would be on Wolves here. Wolves are better defensively than the rest of the cellar dwellers. I think that they're just good enough to potentially stay out of relegation this season. But looking at the Chelsea lines, again, if they've really struggled when they haven't had their top tier center backs in creating safely. So they should be dominant. I've had my complaints about Sanchez this year. The lack of Sanchez and additional center backs to help open up play for them, Jesus, like it's been awful. And that's one reason why they've had this big slide from when everybody's like, ooh, Chelsea could be title contenders to, ooh, like hopefully we make the Champions League. I think they'll probably be safely Champions League. Given that they're bringing Chalobah back, I think that it's not as bad as it had looked before. I don't know if he's the full answer, but he's definitely an answer that's better than the options they had previously. So the question is, like, do you want to bet at home on a Chelsea team that is very, very good and has a lot of talent and also is probably the freshest team, big team in the league, especially because they get to swap out their squad between Europe, etc. So looking at that, I say that this line's just fair enough, just good enough that I don't want either side of it. And I want to take a couple of weeks to see like how Chelsea's attacking play looks with Chalobah in the squad. Can they make the right adjustments to make life easier for themselves and start to dominate these small teams again? That covers all of my bets for this week. Thank you for following. These ones don't have to be as long because we're just covering the Premier League side. I do have 9 English Championship bets that are available for premium subscribers on the Variance Betting upgrades to the transfer flow. Now, we do a free daily newsletter looking at all the transfers around the world, and we also do team analysis, we do league analysis, game analysis, etc. on the transfer flow. That's our free subscription newsletter. And then Variance Betting is the premium upgrade. So if you want to see my bets earlier, they usually go out sort of 1, 2 p.m. on a Friday, or the midweek rounds for Champions League, et cetera, are going to usually be on Tuesdays. Sometimes they're split across Tuesdays and Wednesdays if it's a big midweek. You can go to the Variance Betting League, subscribe to the newsletter, and you will get all of that in a very timely fashion delivered into your inbox. We also do a lot of explanations and some teaching about how to be a better bettor. Yeah, and we also have some market implied lines available for subscribers inside of that as well. So if you're looking to get some access to some model numbers as to what the world thinks, the gambling world thinks the strengths of these teams are, that's available in there. That's it for me this week. We have something like £5,000 of action in play, and I'll be back after this round to tell you how we did. So big number, £5,000 in play across English Premier League, English Championship this weekend. Wish us luck. And you guys, to all of your betting, good luck to you as well.